Coming up on CodeBet Daily NRL Round 4 preview, a lot of rivalry rounds this weekend. Phil finds his passport and we rip shreds off St George. What have you got for us, Phil?
Just another week online, really, tearing shreds off Anthony Griffin and his Red B outfit that you can put a big red cross through. And the other, just a lot of upset teams for me this week. We've seen a bunch of the underdogs getting up across the NRL to kick off 2023, and it's more of it, particularly at the lines. I'm taking the teams with the starts for the most part. That's my theme of the round. So stick around to find out exactly why.
Get your ear holes around it. There's plenty of value. It's CodeBet NRL Daily. It's really good. Welcome to the CodeBet Daily NRL Round 4 preview. It is Thursday, the 23rd of March, for about another 9.5 hours. I'm your host, Alex Donnelly. Phil's all set up in his study. He's raring to go and rip into Round 4. How are we, Phil?
Good, mate. Yeah, I finally got myself a desk. So we're slowly getting there in this new apartment. We're probably still a week or so away from a proper microphone, but one step at a time, right?
It's what we're all about here at CodeBet Daily. It's the fake it till you make it. Somehow we're still, Stats Guy and I are still here after I think it's about 80 episodes of everything all up. So we're going well. As said, it's round 4 in the NRL. We're not going to waste any time because we have some absolutely cracking games this weekend, and we're going to kick off tonight out at Parramatta at CommBank Stadium. It's a grand final rematch with Parramatta, who are winless. They're 0-3, $3.30, taking on Penrith at $1.38. They're 1-1 and coming off the bye. Those odds are with Bet365 and TopSport. How are we looking at this, Phil? Because Penrith have a really good record off the bye.
Yeah, exactly. Penrith, obviously, I suppose they got things back on track in round 2 before their bye in the Thursday night game as well, and that was against the Rabbitohs. A late fade, of course, as we remember. But look, the Panthers, they turned that losing form around at home, and you would think that, given how frequently these two sides have met over the last 2 seasons, I think it was 4 times last year, 2 in the regular season, 2 in finals, and then it was so this will be their 5th meeting in 12 months. And Para had the wood on the Panthers in the regular season last year. The Eels won both of those matches, but look, Penrith, they figured things out by the time we got to the finals. They've had 2 weeks now to prepare for this game. Para, they're in a world of hurt right now. They're still missing a couple of contributors. They do have Madison back this week, so he'll sort of give them some stiffness on the right edge, you would think, with Matt Doherty pushing back to the bench. I like the Eels with the start. I think, given that they've got, I think it's 7.5. Or 8.5 it is. I like the Eels to cover. But yeah, I do think Penrith will be too good, and they've just had too much time to prepare for this game. And Parramatta, they're scratching their heads right now. They've got dramas with Mitch Moses and his contract, negotiations just lingering, and there's just a bit of a bad smell with the Eels right now. But they do aim up when they take on this Penrith team. They're Western Sydney rivals. I think they can cover.
Well, that's one thing we didn't mention. It is a classic derby in the NRL with the teams out west. But as you said, Parramatta did absolutely dust them during the regular season last year and then got it handed to them when it mattered in the finals. But yeah, I didn't mind the line either, plus 8.5. But I feel bad for Parramatta because I feel like they're going to be 0-5. We'll talk about it more next week. But once they sort of get through that Roosters game, they may start to go on a run. But that's in a few weeks' time that we'll talk about. And so you're pretty keen on Penrith to win, but Parramatta at the line.
I think so. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Parramatta. All you have to do is look at the draw to go. They've been given a rough start, but then you dig a little bit deeper as well, and they had the Seagulls away last week coming off their bye. They've got the Panthers this week coming off their bye.
Yep.
And they've got the Roosters next week coming off their bye. So they've been given no early season favours. Something tells me they will get a win in one of these next 2 games. But my head-wise, you just have to say that the Panthers will get home head-to-head in this one.
I was going to mention that they have been absolutely stitched up by the draw. But we head to Friday. The Melbourne Storm, $1.35 with Bet365, take on the West Tigers, $3.35 with Ladbrokes. The line is 8.5 or 9.5 wherever you look, between $1.91 and $1.95. This just smells of Melbourne finally sort of getting back on track. I know we're saying that about a team that is 1-2, but this is the Melbourne Storm we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a funny one with the Storm because midway through last season, they just went on an absolutely horror run with injuries.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like they've started this season with any better luck as of yet. Cam Munster, obviously, he missed the last 2 weeks with that gruesome thumb injury.
If you're queasy, don't look it up on the internet.
Exactly, yeah. And he's back this week, but now they've lost Jerome Hughes, not to an injury, but through suspension. So they've got this young gun, Jonah Pezzett. He'll slot in the halves once again, but it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they have Cam Munster return to the left side where he does play a more natural game in the halves. But that would mean moving Pezzett over to the right to cover for Jerome Hughes, who's been in really good form. Hughes has absolutely been loving having Eli Katoa off his right hip as well, who's come across from the Warriors this year. So the Storm still, they don't have Munster and Hughes as that halves combination again. So that could work against them. But, I mean, the reality is that even though Melbourne have done everything else except look like the competent team that we know that they are, they do get a team which is famously good at being bad, which is the West Tigers. So I know you're on 13 and a half. I like the Storm. I think the Storm can comfortably cover the 8.5 at the line, and so I like the Storm minus 8.5, $1.92 on BetR. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I didn't mind the Storm to win this one by 13 plus, but also the under 42.5. Combine that, it's about $4.65 with Ladbrokes. I think that's a good bet because I could very easily see this being like a 20-0 and just being an absolute snooze fest, which I suppose is why it's at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. So I will give the NRL a wrap on that scheduling because the next game that we talk to, I'm going to call it the Wayne Bennett Cup, is the Dolphins. They're not from Redcliffe or Moreton Bay, taking on the Brisbane Broncos, 8 o'clock New South Wales and Victorian time. Of course, 7 o'clock up in Queensland, of course, clashing with the Melbourne Demons and Brisbane Lions going head-to-head across town at the Gabba. There's going to be 100,000 people watching sport in Brisbane tomorrow night, and it is going to be insane. And I forgot to mention, both teams are unbeaten. No one would have seen that coming.
And I'm one of them, by the way. I'm flying up tomorrow.
Oh,
I cannot wait for this game. Yeah, Works sent me, which is unreal.
Oh, we love a work junket.
Yeah, so very much looking forward to the first ever Brisbane derby in the NRL. Derby, I think it is in Queensland.
Yeah, it's a derby in Western Australia only. So it's a derby everywhere else. The Fremantle Dockers and West Coast Eagles call it a bit differently, but didn't mention the odds. $3.75 the Dolphins, the Broncos $1.30. The line is 11.5.
Interesting line too, because no Felice Kafusi to aim up. He was obviously vitally important in terms of their round one win. But the Dolphins have shown that they're at the very least a competent, competitive football team. And they obviously impressed us thoroughly in round one against the Roosters at Suncorp Stadium. They impressed me thoroughly in week 2 to grind out a win in Redcliffe against the Raiders. I tipped Canberra heading into that one. And probably in both of those games, I'd slightly overlooked just the emotional leverage that they had to pull, given that it was for the first instance, their first NRL game, and then in round 2, their first game at Redcliffe, at KO Stadium. And then last week, they took on a very depleted Newcastle team in Newcastle, but it was a test and they passed it.
Yep.
This is a whole different kettle of fish because it's the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium, and how many times can they dig in and use that emotion and that adrenaline heading into an NRL game? And it's not really something that, as punters and as, quasi-experts here, but maybe we just have to predict that once again they're going to lean into that emotional high and hold on with an 11.5-point start. I'm taking the Dolphins even without Kafusi and even with Isaiah Katoa, their young half, in some doubt with an elbow injury. I really like the look of this Broncos team. They've got incredible firepower in the backs, but it took them too long really to pull away against the Dragons last week. I wanted to see them dominate that game early. Maybe they were a little bit distracted by the fact that there was this huge occasion awaiting them in round 4. But I think the Dolphins can hold on with an 11.5-point start, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like I talked about it last week with the Roosters and the Bunnies. I was like, the Roosters are just going to get up for this no matter how they've been playing, and they ground out a 2-point win. So you look at that, but it's also, this is a very stern test for them. They're going to get pumped at some stage, and they could just run into a brick wall that is the Broncos this weekend. I didn't mind Selwyn Cobbo to score a try. He's got a try in 4 of his last 5 games that the Broncos have been a favourite in. He's about $1.80 with Bet365 at the moment, so I thought him just to crash over was a nice little bet, but I'll be flicking back and forth between this and the AFL game for sure.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'll be firmly focused on the NRL this week, and I suppose somewhat out of protest as well, because it's not smart by the AFL. They shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. They have to consider what else is going on in Australian sport.
Out first. The AFL were out first, and Valandi just went, "No, don't care, going to do it." Which is very PVL as a racing man.
Well, okay, I'll backtrack a little bit there. But still, it's not smart.
No, it's completely dumb. And having a look at the AFL schedule this week, some of the Sunday games are pretty terrible. Like this game between Melbourne and Brisbane could have very easily gone on the Sunday afternoon schedule. That's just what they've done, but that's up to them. We look to the other Queensland derby, shall we say. The Cowboys, $1.45 with Bet365, take on the Gold Coast Titans, who are $2.88 with BetR. The line is 7.5 across the board here. I'll be honest, I have no idea about this match because I thought the Titans would get smashed last week, and they made me look like a dill.
Yeah, I had Storm 13+ in a couple of little multis, to be honest, and it was actually looking good at one point, but then I don't know, something happened during that game, and Gold Coast just pulled away. And we sort of referenced already Melbourne. Just there's something not quite right with them at the moment. But look, the Titans, their best and their worst. There's still a little bit in between those two things within last week's game, and then from round 1 to round 2, and 2 to 3 as well. If you can't beat the Dragons, I'm not going to respect you. That's my general philosophy.
It's fair.
So I'm having a really tough time reading this Gold Coast team, it's fair to say. But they are 2 out of 3 now, heading into round 4, and they meet a Cowboys team which is right now fairly depleted as well. They've lost front rower Reuben Cotter for a couple of weeks at least, and he's a really important contributor for them in the middle of the field. Obviously broke through and played some really good games for the Maroons last year at Origin level as well. So no Reuben Cotter. He joins Drinkwater on the sidelines. Tom Chester showed a lot at fullback last week. He debuted the year before, but that was his first NRL start. Okay. And he gave them quite a bit at the back, gave them some nice energy, but obviously it took the Cowboys some time to figure some things out on offense, and their goal line attack just didn't look all that great last week. The Cowboys against the Warriors, they ended up losing at home to a New Zealand side, which is better.
That was a bit of a shock.
We expect more from this Cowboys team, and frankly, with 7.5-point start, once again, I think I'm taking that, and I think Gold Coast can win this game. That's the reality. So if you are feeling spicy, I don't mind the Titans at $2.90 on BetR, frankly. But with the 7.5-point start, I think that's where I'm leaning again.
Yep, I like that. I can't knock that whatsoever. That game just has me a little bit too confused. So I'll take Phil's word here as we move across to Accor Stadium, where South Sydney, who host a game out in Western Sydney, I'm going to keep banging on about that forever, take on the Manly Sea Eagles. Prices here are $1.60 for Souths, Manly at $2.48. Of note, Manly have lost 12 of their last 13 at Accor Stadium because, as everyone knows, people from the northern beaches don't cross the bridge.
I don't know if that's a personal shot at me as well.
No, that's from my time spending 20 years in Sydney, just whacking everyone who lives in the northern beaches.
Yeah, as I broadcast from my Manlyvale apartment.
That makes it even better.
And I'm going up to Queensland this weekend, so, you know.
Well, you do have to cross the bridge to get to the airport. That is notoriously the only time you guys cross the bridge.
Look, to be honest, I prefer to go to Queensland than Homebush. But I digress. You're not wrong. And that is clearly what the bookies are thinking here as well. Because the reality is we're talking about an unbeaten, unchanged Manly team heading into round 4. And they have looked every bit the contender so far from what we've seen of this Eagles team so far. They bullied the Bulldogs off the park in round 1. They're fresh now. They went into Thursday night last week coming off the bye, and they did enough against a Parramatta team who we still probably think are contenders, despite the fact that they sit 0-3. So the Seagulls team, they're a good team. They're 1-17, same as last week. They've got Tom Trbojevic hitting his straps at fullback. Daly Cherry Evans. They got back Josh Schuster last week, who joins DCE in the halves, and he had some quality touches. He's a really promising young footballer, and having him in the halves alongside DCE gives them another dimension. They've got one of the best edge forward combinations in the game. Haumole Olakau'atu and Kelma Tuolangi, who is a little bit lesser known on the left edge, but I strongly rate Tuolangi as well as Olakau'atu, who's already getting Origin hype off the back of his strong start to the season. Scored that intercept try late last week, which, given the Eels' comeback, ended up being match defining for the Seagulls. And they're paying $2.48 on Better. I really like that. It's almost my bet of the week, to be honest. I know you've just outlined the reasons why the bookies are all over the Rabbitohs this week, and the Seagulls just don't have good Accor Stadium form. But the Rabbitohs team, they've got a depleted forward pack right now. They lose Tavita Totola again. He was KO'd in his first hit up of the year. He missed round 2, came back last week, and he's probably their most important front row forward heading into this season. He's taken the reins over from any of the Burgess brothers, particularly Tom, who's still around for South Sydney these days. Cam Murray is their most important middle forward. We all know that, but Totola was turning himself into their sort of, their leader in the front row. He's out. So I think the Seagulls can win the battle through the middle, and I think they've got the class to match it with the Rabbitohs big names as well. So at 2.48 on Better, I love that, and with the 4.5 start, give me some of that as well. So far there's a theme. I'm taking all the underdogs with the start, and if you look at the results so far, it's been a lot of the underdogs over the last 2 weeks have got up, and I'm sticking with that form here this week as well.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. It's a bit, it just seems that way with the way the season started, where you can finally start trusting some form and really taking sets against teams. So I don't mind that at all. I just didn't mind the over, obviously, depending on some of the rain that's about in Sydney at the moment. It's said that there's going to be 40 to 50 mils on Friday and possibly some on Saturday. So if there's no rain, take the over. If there is rain, take the under, I reckon. But that's my take on the game. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes, because if Manly can snap that run of outs, you've sort of got to stamp them as a contender as we move ahead into Sunday and cross the Tasman to Mount.
Yeah, I would just add at the end there as well. If there's one thing the Seagulls have shown us this season so far, they can score points, but they can concede them as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't mind the over in this one as well, particularly, as you said, if it's not too wet.
Yep, so that's our 7:30 Saturday night. So just obviously pay attention to Rose Hill on Sunday, where the form at punters.com.au will be up later today. Cross promotion, how good is that? We go ahead to Mount Smart Stadium. The New Zealand Warriors are $1.75 taking on the Canterbury Bulldogs, who are $2.10. The line is 1.5, which basically means the bookies are just gone, I don't know. Good luck. New Zealand at home. Both teams are 2-1. This is an intriguing matchup because I feel that there's 2 New Zealand Warriors. There's the team that plays at home, and there's, should I say 3 teams. The one that shows up now and then away, and then the other one that goes, crap, we have to get on the plane again.
That's true. That's true. This one's a tough read, to be honest. The Warriors slight favourites $1.75 on with Bet365, and frankly, the Warriors, I think they've earned some respect,
Yep.
and I think that's reflected in the way that the bookies see this one as well. You have to be a decent side to go up to North Queensland and bring home 2 points.
Yep.
They held their own against the Roosters in round 2. And they got a win in round 1 as well. So this is a 2-1 team heading into round 4. And the Bulldogs' best and worst has been quite far apart to kick off this season as well. So I think the Warriors are rightly a warm favourite in this game, and that's who I've tipped head to head as well. But I don't have a strong read on it. It's not my bet of the week by any stretch. But yeah, the fact is that Andrew Webster, he was one of the assistant coaches at the Penrith Panthers. He's taken over as head coach of this Warriors team.
Yep.
And from everything that we've seen so far, he's done an incredible job at as far as keeping this team defensive. They're staying in games defensively, and their goal line defense has been really impressive so far this season.
Yep.
And the Bulldogs, whilst they did turn things around after that shocking display at Brookvale Oval in round 1, their attack has been sort of a little bit hit and miss so far this season. So I think the Warriors can probably keep this Bulldogs team to 3 tries or less.
Yep.
and find more points in this game. So I'm not sure if I'm necessarily hitting the over in this game, even though we're talking about probably 2 middle-of-the-rung teams when it's all said and done, but I don't mind the Warriors here.
Yep. Well, the over-under is 42.5 points here. I was actually pretty keen on the Warriors. They've won 5 of their last 6 against the Dogs, and the one loss was in Golden Point. So didn't mind that whatsoever. And this also, they've won their last 4, which also you coincide probably 3 of them where they haven't played in New Zealand because of COVID and everything else. So coming back home to play a team that they know they've got a good record against is up. Yeah, I don't mind that at about, $1.75. So I may have just talked myself into a best bet of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors minus 1.5 is the way I'm going to pick this game for Code Bet. So, get on New Zealand back home. Like, that we spoke about the emotional edge with the Dolphins earlier and whether or not they can leverage any more of that heading into round 4 in a Brisbane derby. The Warriors, they've been starved of home games over the last several years as well, and maybe they've still got some of that in store heading into this week as well.
I like it. We head across to what will be the main game, I believe, on Sunday afternoon. I'm shocked this is, as the Newcastle Knights, $2.80, they're 1-2, take on the Canberra Raiders, $1.47, they're also 1-2. I'm going to be honest, the Raiders should just turn up, smash them and go home.
They probably should. The Raiders have disappointed me a couple of times this year. They've been impossible to tip so far in 2023. I think all of us sort of wrote them off last week, and then they jagged a win against a really strong Cronulla team to finish round 3. I tipped them to win in Redcliffe. They didn't. They've been a tough one to sort of get a read on so far this year. But they're playing a very average Newcastle team, who probably the only team better than Newcastle. The only team worse than Newcastle right now are the Tigers. Yeah. And we already saw that game play out in round 2. So the Raiders should get the job done here, but the line is interesting. 7.5, I'm not sure what to do with it, but I think I'm leaning Canberra because they still do have their 1-17 pretty much intact.
And Papali'i is a massive in.
Sorry?
Josh Papali'i coming in for Canberra is just huge.
He is. I don't think he'll play big minutes, and he'll certainly give them some starch up front. Maybe they give him sort of 16, 17 minutes in his first stint, and the same at the back end of that second half. Joe Tarpany, he's one of the best props in rugby league, full stop, new sentence. he's the best front rower in Canberra. There's no doubt about that. I personally have him as the best front rower in the NRL right now.
Okay.
And the fact that they welcome back Josh Papali'i to that middle rotation as well gives them a huge boost. If there's one thing about this Knights team that just has not gone their way so far, it's been any one of their front rowers stepping up and saying, I'm taking the reins here. We waved goodbye to Dave Clemmer in the off-season. Both Safidi boys have played Origin footy, and neither of them have impressed me yet this season. Honestly, the only middle forward that seems to roll their sleeves up for this Newcastle lineup is a guy by the name of Leo Thompson, who is by no means household. He has worked his way into the starting side at various stages so far. They do get Kurt Mann back at 13, but he's a smaller middle forward operator who gives them some ball playing, but not necessarily that punch up the middle. And with Corey Horsburgh in tremendous form, coming off the bench, coming off a double against the Sharks last week, you would think that the Raiders are just going to absolutely bully them through the middle of the park, unless one of the Saifidi boys pulls their finger out for the night. So the more I talk about this game, the more I'm talking myself into the Raiders minus the 7.5, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I was pretty keen on the Raiders too. Newcastle have lost their last 6 at home as well. That's not at all ideal against a team who's going to be up and about after knocking off the Sharks last weekend. And speaking of the Sharks, they're in the final game for the weekend yet again. And man, this is an average way to finish off the weekend. St George Illawarra host them. They're $2.65. Cronulla's $1.54. This is down at Jubilee Stadium, down in the Gong. Anthony Griffin getting told to reapply for his job after 3 rounds. I'm going to throw that one into the not ideal category. Please give me a rundown of why the Dragons are doing this. And many people that I've sort of talked to that know rugby league better than me, like, yeah, he's a bad coach and he probably shouldn't have got the job.
This is a massive can of worms for me, Alex. Look, honestly, I've been considering writing like a deep, thorough investigation into this Dragons team for over a year now, because the whole club is just... I feel like we talk about this every week. Yeah, the whole club is an absolute mess. If you watched CodeBet Daily last week for the NRL preview, you would have seen us tear shreds off this Dragons team. And what do you know? A few days later, there's controversy coming out about the head coach who was put in place down there for goodness knows why a few years ago. And the reality is that as we sort of mentioned last week, the front office, along with the head coach, all they're trying to do is keep their jobs. That's the way that they select their team. That's the way that they have assembled this roster. They just put together a bunch of old, experienced, reliable players that can do a job, that have no ceiling whatsoever. They're not trying to win premierships. They're trying to win 8 or 10 games, keep their jobs for the next year, and continue getting paid. That's all they're doing. It's an absolute disgrace. Their fans deserve so much better. Not that I'm incredibly high on the Dragons fan base by any means, but anyone that wants to invest their time, effort, emotions, and money and membership into a football club deserves so much better than what the Dragons people in those important positions and administrators are dishing up right now. And the fact of the matter is, because of the way that the Dragons have constructed this roster, there will be weeks where they get absolutely plastered, and I look forward to those games because that's what they deserve as a football club. But they should be able to stick themselves in and hang around for a long time, like they did at Suncorp Stadium last week against the Broncos. But that's not to say that I think they can actually win against a quality opposition this week. I won't be tipping them at all against top 6 teams across 2023 unless they show form that I'm not expecting. Ben Hunt will keep them in many games. He will paper over many cracks in this disappointing roster. But the Sharks, 13 plus, Mulatalo anytime. It's paying about $3.50 across the markets. And I like that. I like the Sharks minus a 5.5 point start as well. So if the Sharks can't win this one by more than 2 scores, then I don't know what's going on in Cronulla. But I think they steady the ship, get back to 2-2 to start the year.
Yep.
Whether or not Nicho Hines plays, because that there is still a little bit of doubt around that one. I suppose that the risk is for people that play fantasy and Supercoach and all the rest of it. This is the final game of the round. There's a ton of people looking to bring Nicho Hines in this week. Yeah. They've got to bite us around the corner, the Sharks. I think wait. Let's just wait till final teams are announced to see what happens there. But if Nicho does come back into the team, that obviously gives them an extra leg as well.
Would it be worth, just for those, because I was also looking at him anytime try scorers, he's got to try in 3 of his last 4 against the Dragons, because considering they have the Warriors next week and then the bye, I believe, the following week, is it just worth putting him on ice for another 2 weeks? All right, let's get a 3-week training block into you and bring you back in, round 7 or 8, round 7 against the Roosters, and bring you back for that. That seems a smart play, because they should win this and they should beat the Warriors next week. Yeah,
that's the smart conservative play. And you hear murmurs just from people that might have an insight from somewhere that this calf issue just has been lingering as well.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not prepared to sort of, strongly declare one thing or another until we see those final team sheets. I think there's every chance that maybe Nicho's a late scratching and maybe they've named him just to keep the media off their backs for another week. Yeah, look, if he's right, you play him. It's NRL football at the end of the day. I don't think you need to get overly cute with it, but if there's any doubt whatsoever, you've got a really handy replacement in Braden Trindle, who's been playing the lights out, honestly, across the first 3 weeks to start the season. Matt Moylan, he's been doing a tremendous job in terms of his ball playing the last couple of years as well. Matt Moylan's figured out a lot about himself and his role in this team the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And
I rate him. He's a gun.
They're a good football team. They've got strike power. Will Kennedy at the back, he can do some ball playing as well. They've got a really strong forward pack. So there's no reason why this Sharks team can't just rock up and win by more than 5.5, frankly, whether or not Nicho Hines gets to the start line.
Easy, simple. I love the way we finished that. Send your hate tweets to us on the internet if you are a St. George fan. That's it for the round 4.
No, I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, but I feel like that would fire someone up. And we've said every week it's St. George are a terribly run business. They're a terrible football club, and Ben Hunt is the only reason that they aren't extremely terrible. It's a sad old story for the poor Dragons. And Ben Hunt, maybe you should probably leave and get some success again in your life.
Well, the irony is he's sticking up for Anthony Griffin, and he wants something. He wants a get out clause if Griffin isn't extended. It's quite baffling. It really is. I mean, Griffin seems to get along fine with some of the players in the team, but he does no favors to other players as well. Moses Mbai is starting 9. What are you doing? Jacob Little coming off the bench, recruit from the Tigers. He was the only reason that they were able to get the job done in that game against the Titans in round 2. What he added when he came onto the field, just the sort of the bit extra that he offers out of dummy half, and we're naming Moses Mbai at 9. It's just Jackson Ford. He had to move to a different country to get a starting job in his best position. Yeah. On the edge, and already he looks like he could be one of the buys of the year for the Warriors. So I just don't get it. I just don't get it with this team.
Yeah, round 4 and a Dragons drive-by all wrapped up here on Code Bet Daily. But best bets for the weekend, Phil, I'm going Melbourne 13+ and the Warriors to win, also with a sneaky multi. Throw in the Sharks to win, plus that Melbourne Storm to win by 13+ and under 42.5. That'll get you $12.06 with Ladbrokes. That could be the donation yet again. But what have you got for us?
Yeah, look, I'll reiterate that one. Sharks 13+. They don't have to travel too far for this game at Netstrata Jubilee in Cogra. Tied into Ronaldo Mulatalo, anytime try scorer. You're getting around $3.50 across markets there. And I'll go back to the Saturday night game. The Seagulls, $2.48 on Better against a Rabbitohs team that's missing players right now and just looks a little bit dysfunctional, frankly.
Yep. I love it. I love it. That's CodeBet Daily, done and dusted for the NRL Round 4. Check out Phil's previews on the website. Head to codebet.com.au. Also check out the newspapers every morning because we have our previews in there as well. But we are done and dusted. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks very much, mate. I will finish off all the previews for CodeBet on the website ahead of round 4 in the NRL, and then I'll go and find my boarding pass and head to the airport because I have a trip to Suncorp Stadium to look forward to.
You also need your passport as you're leaving the Northern Beaches. Gerald, thank you for producing. I'll get that drive-by in and try and get out of here as quickly as possible. Get around the show, like, review, subscribe, and star it. Please leave a comment on your things. Share it in your Tinder groups, your group chats, whatever. Facebook, IG, Twitter, TikTok, everything else. As I said, thank you, Phil. May all your bets come in. Happy punting. And as always, gamble responsibly. It's CodeBet Daily, out.